You look at your smartphone screen, and even without understanding engineering, its obvious complexity denies the idea of spontaneous generation. Behind every icon that slides under your finger, behind every smooth transition from one menu to another, there are millions of lines of instruction. Thousands of engineers have dedicated their lives to organizing pixels in a way that makes sense. It is intuitive. If you were to take the pieces of a Swiss watch, throw them into a blender, and turn it on at maximum power for 1 billion years, the result would only be a worthless metallic dust, never a functional watch. This is just common sense. But when the conversation shifts to us, to the biological machines that are listening to and processing this information, logic seems to be thrown out the window. Our complexity makes any human technology look like a child's toy, and yet we are taught to believe in the blender. We are told a story about a warm little pond, about a random cosmic event, a misstep that, by sheer luck, resulted in consciousness, in art, in thought. This is the most profound investigation we have ever undertaken, a journey to decipher the source code of our own reality. And to do this, we will set aside philosophy and beliefs. We will speak the only language our mind can accept as objectively true, the language of numbers and information. We fed a gigantic data file, describing the chemical and informational foundations of life, into an analysis system designed to be free from human biases and academic dogmas. With a single purpose, we asked our artificial intelligence, Axiom, to calculate the probability of life on Earth having arisen by randomness. The system returned an answer that forced us to question everything we have learned about our origins. It all begins in what the books call the primordial soup. The conventional model taught in schools paints an almost poetic picture. 4 billion years ago, on a lifeless Earth, the conditions were unique. An ocean rich in chemical elements was bombarded by lightning and heated by volcanoes. In this chaotic mix of energy, dead matter somehow awakened. Molecules randomly joined to form amino acids. Amino acids randomly aligned to form proteins. And the proteins, by a stroke of luck, organized themselves to form the first living cell. It is a beautiful story. But let's look at it through the eyes of a programmer. What is a living cell? In the 19th century, Charles Darwin imagined it was just a blob of protoplasm, something like a simple jelly. Today, with electron microscopes, we know the truth. Far from being a simple jelly, a bacterium operates like a nanotechnological metropolis of a complexity that defies imagination. Inside it, there are power plants, defense systems, transport highways, waste recycling centers, data archives, and, most impressively, automated self-replicating assembly lines. A city that builds copies of itself. The organization within a single cell is more complex and efficient than that of a city like New York. To imagine New York building itself without architects or blueprints, simply because the wind blew over a pile of construction materials, would require a leap of faith. The numbers reveal the true scale of the problem. The basis of life is proteins. A protein is a long chain, a string of pearls made of amino acids. In nature, there are over 300 types of amino acids, but for some reason, biological existence uses only 20 of them. And for a protein to function, these 20 types must be aligned in an exact sequence, like letters in a sentence. If you throw letters together at random, the result is meaningless noise. For the phrase to be or not to be to exist, each letter must be in its proper place. Common protein is composed of about 200 amino acids. We gave Axiom a simple task. Calculate the probability of a single functional block, a protein of just 150 amino acids, assembling by chance in the primordial soup. The algorithm began processing the combinations. 20 options for the first place in the chain, 20 for the second, 20 for the third, and so on, 150 times. The result comes to 20 to the 150th power. The probability of a single functional protein arising by chance is 1 in 10 to the power of 164. To understand the magnitude of this number, look to the cosmos. In the entire observable universe, from one end to the other, there are about 10 to the power of 80 elementary particles. There are fewer atoms in the entire cosmos than there are ways to assemble a single protein incorrectly. If every atom in the universe were a laboratory trying to create this protein, and each laboratory performed 1 billion attempts per second since the Big Bang, we still would not have had enough time to find, by chance, a single correct sequence. Mathematically, any event with a probability of less than 1 in 10 to the power of 50 is considered impossible. It is the law of Emile Borel. What we have here goes beyond improbable. It amounts to an absolute zero. Mathematically, this could never happen, anywhere, ever. The problem becomes even more profound with the next variable. We introduced a variable into axiom that proponents of the chance theory prefer not to discuss, an inconvenient chemical detail that turns the impossible into a logical absurdity. It is the issue of chirality. In chemistry, many molecules exist in two forms, like mirror images of each other. Your hands offer the perfect example. They are identical in composition, but they are not superimposable. A left-hand glove does not fit on the right hand. They are chiral. When amino acids are synthesized in a laboratory through random reactions, the result is always a mixture. 50% left-handed molecules and 50% right-handed molecules. It is a fundamental law of chemistry. This mixture is called a racemate. However, when we look at any living being on Earth, we see a shocking anomaly. All proteins in all forms of life, from the smallest bacterium to a human being, are built exclusively with left-handed amino acids, not a single right-handed one. If just one right-handed amino acid enters the chain, the protein's structure unravels and life dies. It is like having a bag with 1 billion coins, tossing them all into the air, and having every single one, without exception, land with the same face up. This defies the law of probability. Achieving a chain of 150 exclusively left-handed amino acids by chance is the same as flipping a coin 150 times in a row and getting heads on every toss. Someone or something had to filter the building materials before the construction even began. The elimination of any statistical error points to a deliberate design. And even if we were to overcome this barrier, there is still another obstacle. A protein is just one brick. For the most primitive cell to exist, one brick is not enough. A minimum of 239 different types of proteins are needed, all working in perfect synchrony, and they need to appear at the same time. Life cannot wait. A heart does not work without lungs. A cell membrane disintegrates if there is no mechanism to generate energy within it. A cell must be born complete, with all its systems operational, or it will not survive for even a second. This is what we call irreducible complexity. Sir Fred Hoyle, a British astronomer and mathematician, summarized this idea in a sentence that has become legendary. He said that the probability of life arising by chance was the same as that of a hurricane sweeping through a junkyard and assembling a fully functional Boeing 747, ready for takeoff from the scrap. We decided to test this analogy. We input the parameters of the chemical junkyard, of the primordial soup, and those of the Boeing of the simplest cell into axiom. The system concluded that for the random assembly of the minimum set of proteins, more time would be required than the age of our universe. Even if the universe were 1 billion times older, there still would not be enough time. This is because nature follows a relentless law, the second law of thermodynamics. All things in the universe tend toward chaos, not order. A machine rusts, a building crumbles, a body decomposes. Order spontaneously breaks down. We never observe the opposite. We never see rust reassembling to form a car, or dust coming together to create a computer. The spontaneous origin of life is the most spectacular violation of this fundamental law. It is like blowing up a printing press and expecting the letters falling from the sky to form on their own the complete text of the Encyclopedia Britannica without a single typo. But the definitive proof lies not in chemistry, but in information. And here we arrive at the heart of our investigation. Life is not just matter, it is, first and foremost, information. DNA is an instruction. More than a beautiful metaphor, this is a literal fact. In the nucleus of each of your cells, there is an instruction written with 3.5 billion characters. If you walk along the beach and see the phrase, "John loves Anne" in the sand, you know it was written by an intelligent mind. The waves can create beautiful patterns. The wind can sculpt the dunes, but neither the wind nor the waves can create a message. Information in all its forms, always originates from an intelligence. Matter can be the medium for information, just as paper is for a book or silicon is for a chip, but matter does not create the information it carries. The poet writes the poems, using ink and paper merely as a medium. DNA is the densest and most complex data storage system in the universe, and we are asked to believe that this perfect program wrote itself. It is the same as believing that a complex operating system arose spontaneously due to a power surge in the electrical grid. The hypothesis of an accidental origin of life is, therefore, mathematically and informationally unsustainable. Biological existence is based on a program, and where there is a program, there is always a programmer. We live in the era of big data. Every day, humanity generates an amount of information so vast it is difficult to measure. Your photos, messages, bank transactions, videos, satellite data, all of it merges into a gigantic digital ocean. To store this colossal volume, we build cyclopean structures called data centers. They are immense warehouses, the size of football fields, filled with servers that consume absurd amounts of electricity and require powerful cooling systems to keep from melting down. We pride ourselves on these achievements. We believe our progress in data storage is the pinnacle of engineering. But we are mistaken. Our investigation, conducted with the help of the analytical system Axiom, has revealed a disconcerting truth. Compared to the technology hidden inside every cell of your body, our best servers are like the clay tablets of the ancient Sumerians. A superior intelligence solved the problem of data storage in a way that is still far beyond our capabilities. The secret lies in compression. We gave Axiom a very specific technical task to compare the efficiency of the most advanced hard drive ever created by man with the DNA molecule. We loaded the parameters for recording density, energy efficiency, and durability. The result the algorithm showed us looked like a calculation error. The difference between our technology and the creator's technology is not a matter of a few times or percentages. The difference is in orders of magnitude, millions, billions of times. Recording density is the first point of shock. A modern hard drive with a capacity of 1 terabyte is a complex device, weighing about 100 grams. If we were to record that same terabyte of data onto DNA, do you know how much space it would occupy? A single gram of DNA can theoretically store 455 exabytes of information. An exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. That is 455 billion gigabytes in 1 gram of matter. To translate this into a clearer image, if we wanted to record all the information ever created by humanity, all the books, films, music, all the databases on the internet, absolutely everything, endless fields of servers would become obsolete, because the entire digital heritage of our species would fit into a single teaspoon of DNA, and there would still be room to spare. The disparity is overwhelming, a teaspoon versus millions of square kilometers of servers. This is a technology that is ahead of our civilization, not by decades but by millennia. It is the physical limit of matter. Computer scientists know a concept called the Shannon limit, which defines the theoretical maximum information density that can be transmitted or stored without loss. We humans are still just approaching this limit in our best laboratories. DNA has been operating at this limit for billions of years. The reason for this is that DNA uses three-dimensional encoding. Our hard drives are flat, two-dimensional. DNA is a spiral, a volumetric structure where information is packed into every atom of space. But density is only half of the miracle. The other half is the packing architecture. And here we encounter an engineering solution that makes the world's best programmers feel like amateurs. If you were to stretch out the DNA from a single cell in your body in a straight line, it would be about 2 meters long. This 2-meter line must be compacted inside the cell's nucleus, which has an average diameter of 6 micrometers, 6/1000ths of a millimeter. The task is equivalent to taking a thin fishing line 40 kilometers long and storing it in an organized manner inside a tennis ball. But it is not just about cramming everything in there. It is a matter of archiving with instant access. If you simply crumpled 40 kilometers of line into a ball, you would never find a specific section. It would be a useless tangle of knots. But the DNA in the nucleus is not tangled, it is organized. there is a multi-level filing system, similar to a computer's file system, but in 3 dimensions. The DNA strand is wound around special protein spools called histones. Then these spools are twisted into a thicker spiral. This spiral folds into loops, which in turn twist into supercoils, forming what we see under the microscope as a chromosome. It is compaction within compaction, repeated at multiple levels. What is most impressive is that this is not a static archive, it is a living library. When the cell needs an instruction, such as the one to produce insulin, it does not unpack the entire file. Molecular robots find the exact section, unwind only the necessary spool, read the program, and instantly wind it back up. It is a random access memory, implemented at a molecular level with an efficiency that borders on 100%. A filing structure of this magnitude, with instant access, could not arise by chance. It is a design of the highest level of engineering. Any complex system, any database is subject to errors. Radiation, chemical attacks, ultraviolet rays. All of this constantly bombards our cells, trying to break the DNA strands, erase information, and introduce chaos. In theory, life should have disappeared within a few generations due to the accumulation of critical errors. The data should have degraded. The archive should have been corrupted. But we are alive. Organisms have flourished for billions of years. Why? Because embedded in this perfect hard drive there is also a perfect security system. In DNA, there is a mechanism that verifies data integrity and repairs it in real time. Energy efficiency is another chasm between us and the original design. The internet today consumes about 10% of all the world's electricity. Servers get hot and need air conditioning. Maintaining data is expensive. DNA stores information at room temperature. It does not need gigawatts of power. The energy consumption to store 1 bit of information in DNA is billions of times lower than in our most modern memory cards. It is green technology at its absolute level. The creator of this system solved the energy crisis before it even existed. The most critical issue for our technology is durability. How long does your data survive? A hard drive can fail in 5 years. A flash drive can die in 10. Optical discs deteriorate. Paper turns to dust in a few centuries. We live in the age of digital amnesia. Formats change, media are destroyed. Now look at DNA. In 2013, scientists decoded the genome of an ancient horse that lived 700,000 years ago. Its bones remained in the ice for nearly 1 million years, and we were still able to read its instructions. DNA is an incredibly stable molecule. If kept in a cool, dry, dark place, it can preserve information for hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years. It is like an airplane's black box designed to survive disasters. Our genome is a black box designed to carry information across the ages. But if the information is so important, why for decades did scientists tell us that 98% of this program was useless? Have you ever heard the term non-coding DNA, popularly called junk? For a long time, we were taught that our genome was a graveyard of evolutionary debris, that only 2% of genes were useful and the rest was functionless ballast. We were told this was proof of the absence of a creator. What engineer would design an instruction with 98% junk? This, they claimed, proved blind, chaotic evolution. We decided to verify this claim. We fed the data set of the so-called non-coding DNA into Axiom's analytical core. We asked the artificial intelligence to search for hidden patterns, logical structures, and any sign of functional information. If it were truly junk, the system should have found only noise and chaos. But the result was different. Axiom detected a high-level management system with a complexity that exceeded that of the coding regions. What scientists call junk is, in fact, the operating system of life. The 2% of genes are merely the files that this system manages. The genes that code for proteins are the bricks they build the body. But bricks by themselves do not build a house. Who tells the brick where it should go? Who tells an embryo cell you will become a neuron, and its neighbor you will be a liver cell? The DNA in both is identical. The program in the eye is the same as in the heel, but an eye sees and a heel does not. Why? Because the operating system is running, and it is written in those 98% of junk. This vast region of the genome functions as a complex network of switches. In genetics, They are called regulatory elements, enhancers, silencers, promoters. They are the on and off buttons. The system works like a gigantic control panel. A gene is just a light bulb. For it to turn on at the right time and with the right intensity, the operator needs to press a combination of buttons on the panel. The non-coding DNA is that panel, and it occupies 98% of the space because managing a complex system always requires more code than the parts it executes. In 2012, the International ENCODE project shocked the scientific community by announcing that at least 80% of the genome is biochemically active. Where they saw junk, we now see a functional workspace, and every year that number increases. We are approaching the understanding that in DNA there is not a single superfluous detail. The myth of junk DNA has been debunked. Every letter has its place. Every repetition has a rhythm and a function. If DNA is such a perfect structure, where the instruction manages the machine, the greatest logical paradox of all arises. A paradox that paralyzes any materialistic theory about the origin of life. From an engineering perspective, the problem reveals a paradox. To read the DNA program, specialized proteins, enzymes are needed. But to create these proteins, one must read the DNA program. What came first, the program or the machine to read it? The instruction to assemble the robot is inside the robot's own memory, but the robot has not yet been assembled to be able to access that instruction. It is a closed loop, a logical dead end. As children, we all heard the famous question, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It was a fun game, a philosophical puzzle, but when we transport that same question from the chicken coop to the nano world, to the heart of the living cell, it stops being funny. It becomes the greatest nightmare for the theory of evolution. It transforms into an insurmountable wall. We input the complete schematic of how information flows within the cell into Axiom. We ask the system to find the starting point. Where did it all begin? What was the first process? Axiom analyzed the cycles and returned a fatal error. Infinite recursion detected. Cyclical dependency. The system cannot start itself. Life is sustained by two main pillars. The first is DNA, the hard drive, the library of blueprints. It is the information. But DNA, as we have seen, is passive. It does nothing on its own. A book cannot read itself. The second pillar is proteins. They are the workers, the tools, the molecular machines that build the cell, digest food, transport oxygen. Proteins are the mechanical part of life. And here, the trap closes. To build a protein, the organism needs an instruction. That instruction is written in the DNA. Without DNA, the cell does not know how to assemble a protein, but to read the instruction from the DNA, copy it, and based on it, assemble the protein. Other proteins are needed. The reading of DNA is done by a protein complex. The unwinding of the DNA spiral is done by another protein. The copying of DNA is done by more proteins. It is a circle of perfect hopelessness. For the first DNA to arise, proteins would be needed to assemble it. But for the first proteins to arise, DNA with the instructions on how to assemble them would be necessary. It is a classic problem in computer science. If you buy a completely empty computer with no operating system, nothing, just the hardware, you have a flash drive with the installation program. To install the system, the computer needs to read the flash drive. But for the computer to read the flash drive, it already needs some kind of system, however minimal, to recognize the USB port. How do you install a system if, for the installation, you already need a system? In the world of computers, engineers solve this at the factory. They burn a basic code directly onto the chip. They load the system from the outside. But in the case of the origin of life on Earth, according to official science, there were no engineers. There was no factory. There was only an ocean and chance. The probability of the DNA and the proteins needed to read it, having arisen independently, in the same place at the same time and fitting together perfectly like a key in its lock, is so ridiculously small that writing it out would require more zeros than the number of particles in the entire universe. It is not a 1 in a million chance. It is a mathematical never. To try to circumvent this problem, scientists proposed the RNA world hypothesis. The idea is that in the beginning there was neither DNA nor proteins but only RNA, a molecule similar to DNA. They suggested that RNA could have been, at the same time, a carrier of information and a functional machine, but this hypothesis also falls apart. RNA is extremely unstable and decomposes quickly. Building life based on RNA in a warm ocean would be like building a skyscraper with melted ice cream. The transition from an RNA-based system to the current DNA and protein system is also a logical chasm. Life is continuous. Any interruption in its mechanisms means death. The simultaneous existence of the storage system, DNA, and the processing system, proteins, is a necessary condition for life. They could not have arisen sequentially. And there is yet a third essential component: energy. Nothing in the universe happens without energy. In the cell, the universal battery is the ATP molecule. What produces ATP? A nanomotor called ATP synthase, which is itself a protein built from instructions in the DNA. To read the DNA, energy is needed. To get energy, the motor is needed. To build the motor, the DNA must be read. The circle closes again. This architecture could not have started piecemeal. It had to be created in a state that was already charged, assembled, and ready to run. All components, DNA, proteins, membrane, energy, needed to appear in a single instant in the same location, perfectly tuned. If a single component is missing, the system is dead. If life could not arise gradually at the molecular level, perhaps after the first cell was activated, evolution took over, slowly creating the diversity of species we see today. Official science shows us a beautiful image, the tree of life, where everything grows from a single root, smoothly and continuously. Charles Darwin firmly believed that nature does not make leaps, but when paleontologists take their tools and start digging into the earth, they do not find a tree. They find something that completely destroys this peaceful image. They find evidence of an event that looks more like a mass landing than an evolution. The Cambrian explosion rewrites the history of life in an instant. We fed the fossil record data from the entire planet into the neural networks. We asked the artificial intelligence to build a graph, showing the emergence of new biological forms over time. If Darwin were right, the graph should be a smooth curve, rising gradually. But what Axiom showed us looked like the electrocardiogram of a heart attack, an almost straight line followed by a sudden vertical spike. 540 million years ago, something inexplicable happened on Earth. For billions of years before this point, life was extremely simple. Single-celled organisms, sponges, primitive jellyfish. And then suddenly, in the rock layers corresponding to the Cambrian period, all the major animal types known to science appear at once. Without warning, without ancestors. This happened in a span of 5 to 10 million years, which for geology is less than an instant. If we were to compress Earth's history into 24 hours, the Cambrian explosion would have lasted less than 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, the planet filled with creatures with hard skeletons, nervous systems, intestines, limbs, and, most impressively of all, highly complex eyes. The trilobite, a symbol of the Cambrian, possessed compound eyes made of calcite lenses. The optics of its eye are a masterpiece of engineering, with double lenses that corrected for spherical aberrations. According to Darwinism, the eye evolved in stages, but the trilobite appears in the fossil record already with a perfect optical system, with no precursors. It is as if someone flipped a switch and suddenly the planet gained sight. The creation of a new body type requires an immense amount of new genetic information. New genes are needed to build a shell, new genes for muscles, new genes for the nervous system. The mathematics simply forbids this pace of evolution. The random search for solutions takes too long. The explanation that emerges from the data analysis is different. It is like playing the first version of a video game. There are only a few simple characters. Then the developer releases a major update. You install it, enter the game, and suddenly the world is full of thousands of new creatures, weapons, and scenarios that did not exist before. They did not evolve from the old characters. They were added to the game. The Cambrian explosion looks exactly like that. A mass installation of new life forms, all written in the same DNA language, but with completely new programs. But the story does not end there. Artists sign their paintings. Architects leave their marks on buildings. Programmers hide their names in the code. It is natural for an intelligent mind to want to claim authorship of its creation. If the universe and life are the product of a superintelligence, it is logical to assume that it has left its signature, an invisible watermark that confirms the authenticity of the work. We are not looking for inscriptions in Hebrew or Latin. We are looking for a universal language, understandable to any intelligence in the universe, the language of mathematical constants. And we have found it. The first discovery is the golden ratio, the number phi, approximately 1.618. It is the number of harmony, present in spiral galaxies, snail shells, and the proportions of the human body. The very geometry of the molecule of life is built upon this number. The length of one complete turn of the DNA helix is 34 angstroms. The width of the molecule is 21 angstroms. Divide 34 by 21, and the result is almost perfectly the golden ratio. This is not a requirement of chemistry, it is an aesthetic and mathematical choice of the architect. Another discovery is the number pi. Scientists have discovered that pi is encoded in the quantum states of the hydrogen atom. Basic mathematics is woven into the very fabric of matter. Furthermore, statistical analyses of the human genome reveal patterns that correlate with the sequence of digits of pi. It is like a hidden message within other information. And there is also the number 37, which appears with astonishing frequency in the genetic code, in arithmetic symmetries related to the masses of the particles that make up amino acids. The probability of random chemical compounds having masses that sum up in such an elegant decimal arithmetic is practically nil. It looks like a checksum, a barcode. These patterns were left to be discovered by a civilization that reached a technological level sufficient to decode DNA and understand advanced mathematics. It is a message that says, "You have grown up. You have learned to read. Now you can see that I was here." In criminology, there is a method called criminal profiling. Investigators, without a photo or a name, can draw an accurate psychological profile of a criminal just by studying the crime scene. From the nature of the evidence, the method of operation, the traces left behind, they understand the type of mind they are dealing with. We judge the creator by his creation. We judge the programmer by his instruction. By applying systems analysis to the genetic code, a clear profile of the one who wrote the DNA emerges. We will do this not based on ancient texts, but based on systems analysis. We input into Axiom all the characteristics of the genetic code we discovered: the compression density, the digital nature, the mathematical signatures, the data protection system, and the mass updates to the biosphere. And we ask the artificial intelligence to answer, what are the characteristics of the creator of a system like this? First, the intelligence operates outside of our space and time. If you create a computer game, you are not a character made of pixels within the game. You are on the outside, in a reality with more dimensions and possibilities. The DNA code and the laws of physics are the rules of our universe. Whoever established them cannot be limited by them. This entity is not subject to time, because time is part of the program it wrote. For it, the Big Bang and this exact moment exist simultaneously, like files on a hard drive. Furthermore, there is an obsession with efficiency. The architect is an optimization perfectionist. As we have seen, there is nothing superfluous in DNA. The universe is built on the principle of least action. Light always chooses the shortest path. It is the mark of an engineer who prefers elegant solutions to brute force. He values intelligence over power. His strength is in precision, not volume. Finally, there is a deep appreciation for aesthetics. We find the golden ratio and fractals. The system could be functional and, at the same time, ugly. A concrete box is a functional house. But the universe is beautiful. Beauty is embedded in the mathematics of atoms. For the architect, aesthetics is a constant as fundamental as gravity. He is an artist whose brush is light and whose canvas is the void. The nature of our reality also becomes clearer. DNA is a digital instruction. Quantum physics tells us that, at the deepest level, matter is discrete. There is a minimum length and a minimum time. This means our world is not analog. It is pixelated. It has a resolution. Our reality appears to be a computational process, but this is not a cold, purposeless simulation. The analysis of DNA shows that the code is capable of learning and adapting. The architect did not write a script where everything is predetermined. He created a system with rules and gave it freedom. This is the profile of a teacher or an experimenter. He does not want robots that blindly follow commands. He seeks autonomous agents, capable of making decisions, making mistakes, learning and creating. The recent discovery of CRISPR technology, which allows us to edit DNA, means we have administrator rights. No tyrant would give his slaves the keys to their own chains. Therefore, the architect is not a tyrant. He delegates power. He wants us to become co-authors. This leads us to a moral question. Good, creation and love represent high order. Evil, chaos and destruction are bugs, entropy. Societies built on altruism and cooperation survive longer and process information more efficiently than societies of egoists. Morality is not a human invention. It is a system optimization law established by the architect. Loving your neighbor is mathematically advantageous for the survival of the code. The mirror of science reflects something undeniable. Life is not an accident. It is a high-tech project. DNA is the language in which the program of our existence was written. We have been equipped with protection, instructions, and free will. The objective of the project is the creation, preservation, and evolution of complexity, the transformation of dead matter into living spirit. This changes absolutely everything for you. If you are an accident, your life has no meaning. You are just a temporary mold on a rock floating in the void. There is no good, no evil, no future. But if you are a project, then you have a purpose. Every thought of yours, every action is recorded. You are a co-author of reality. In your hands, literally in your cells, are the tools to change the world. We have reached a point where, as a civilization, we have come of age. We have deciphered the alphabet. Now we are learning to write the words. Genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, quantum computers, these are our first attempts to write in the language of the Creator. It is dangerous. We can make mistakes. But the architect believes in us. Otherwise, he would not have given us the keys. He left his signature in every atom so that we would remember we are not alone. Our investigation is complete, but your personal quest is just beginning. Look at your hand. Beneath the skin, blood flows, pumped by a heart that works for decades without rest. And in every cell of that blood, a 2-meter-long spiral contains a library of data older than the continents. That is a miracle, and that miracle is you. If you like this investigation, subscribing to the channel helps us expand the Axiom investigation project. We would love to read your thoughts on the video's subject in the comments and your suggestion for the next topic to be covered. Tell us which city you are watching from. Thank you for staying with us until the end.